Oh, jeez. Oh, hey guys. Welcome back to Sketch Science. Today we're talking about water. If you notice, I just took a drink because I was kind of thirsty. Water. Why is it important? Why do we need it? What does it do? It does a lot, actually. It has a whole cycle dedicated just to it and what it does. So, water cycle. Where do we begin when we talk about the water cycle? Well, why don't we talk about water itself? Water, our good old friend H2O. Water, H2O, they're the same thing. Dihydrogen monoxide. Yes, that is the funny or scientific way to say water. If you tell some people that dihydrogen monoxide is dangerous, they might think you're serious. And then you can say, dude, it's just water. So, water, H2O. Why is it important? It's the regulator of all of the world's temperature. So it's like the thermostat for the world. Regulates temperature. What else does it do? Well, our bodies, if you think about it, we have a lot of water in our bodies, right? It helps us with our functions. Body functions. And it helps transport a lot of stuff, right? We use water all the time with ships and different things. It also transports soil nutrients around. It's a transporter. So, if it's a regular body function, it's a transporter, what does that all mean for the water cycle? Why is that important? Why do we have to care about it? Well, without water, we'd all be dead, first of all. But second of all, it does more than just sit in a liquid form. If you think about water, it has three forms that it can take. It can be a solid, also known as ice. It can be a liquid, also known as water. Or it can be a gas or a vapor. These are the different forms water can take, three ways. And they come from all different places. Your ice can be in your glaciers. It can be in snow. It can be all over the place. It's just frozen water. Water over 32 degrees Fahrenheit, but under its boiling point or under its evaporation point is liquid. It takes the form of any container that you put it in. And otherwise, you have a vapor, gas that you can't see up in the air. Sometimes you can see it when it starts to condense, but we'll go over that in a little bit. Now, the first stage of the water cycle. Imagine you have a street. So this street right here has a little puddle in it. It's got a little puddle in it. Well, what does this puddle mean to us? When the sun's energy decides to heat this up, that puddle starts to do something called evaporating. When it evaporates, this little liquid water on the ground starts to rise up. It starts to turn into a gas up in the air. As that rises from the heat, it starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller until it completely dries up. That's when something's drying, the water's evaporating back into a vapor. Now, what happens once it evaporates? Well, when it evaporates into its vapor state, we take a look at the sky. So let's bring in the sun, but let's make it yellow this time because yellow is what we make it. In the sky, there are things called clouds. So there's clouds here, everywhere. Where do those clouds come from? Well, it comes from a little thing called condensation. Clouds come from condensation. What does that mean? Well, when water vapor starts to flow up into the air, it starts to get colder. The up in the air is a lot colder than it is on the ground because you don't have that ground heating you up, the water in the ground keeping heat, everything. It's losing heat and there's not as much water to hold in the sun's energy. So as it goes up, it starts to cool off. As it does, it condenses, it bunches together. All of that gas goes from all of this surrounding area and it bunches into clouds. Clouds are water vapor that's been condensed into a form thick enough that we can see it, but not so thick that it falls out of the sky. It's still not as dense as the air around it. Well, what happens when it does become too dense, when too much water condenses into one place? Well, then you get your rain clouds. Thicker clouds that are so full of water vapor, so tight together, that they start to precipitate. Precipitation. That's your rain. That's your snow. That's your hail. All these things are forms of precipitation. So all that water that goes up into the clouds, it starts to condense a little bit, and then it condenses too much. There's too much water there, and it starts to form back into a liquid. Now, as it falls, sometimes when it's too cold, it turns into a solid as it falls. That's your hail. That's your snow. You can also get sleet, which is kind of a mix. All of these things are forms of precipitation. So, what happens after water precipitates? Well, let's say we've got a mountain here. Mountain range, maybe it's got some snow on top of the caps. And down below we have our valley. Now, when all this precipitation overhead starts to fall, it falls on the side of the mountain. It could be rain, it could be snow. But when it falls down, the top of the mountain sort of funnels this water back down. Sure, it falls into this area, but then it starts to flow down. As it flows down, it starts to run off from high to low, run off. Your precipitation starts to run off. Back down the mountain, down a hill, down a stream. All of it will either go back into a normal waterway. It will pool up in little areas that it sits in. The water will flow to its lowest point it can, and it will fill that up until it can't anymore, until the sun can heat it up and evaporate it again. So once it runs off, it either goes to the ocean, goes to a stream, goes to a river, goes to a lake, or just pools into puddles, and then it will start again. So let's go over the different steps we just went over. The first step was evaporation. Evaporation starts to go up. All of the vapor goes up. Then you have condensation. Condensation starts to turn things into clouds. Then you have precipitation. Precipitation is the rain, the snow, the sleet, the hail, all falling back down. And finally, you have runoff, which is all of that rain, sleet, snow, hail, all of it eventually, when it heats up or it melts, if it does, will get pulled down by gravity from the highest point to the lowest, where it will either pool up, get washed away, and as it does that, it carries soil, nutrients, all these things with it. That is the water cycle. It evaporates, it condensates, it precipitates, it runs off. It evaporates, it condensates, it precipitates, it runs off. And once that's all over, or while that's going on, it moves materials around. It moves your ground around, it moves chemicals around, any of our pollution that gets in the system, it all goes around with it. Now, we're not getting into all the pollution side of it today. I just wanted to get through what the basic parts of the water cycle was, what water does, where it goes. Now, if you'd like to see more, please leave a comment down below. Also leave a comment if you have any questions about the water cycle, anything else you'd like me to add. Please, as always, like the video, because that way I know you saw it, I know you liked it, and I know what type of content you enjoy. And finally, subscribe, so you can keep up with any more content I might put out if you're interested, or finding the channel a lot easier. All of these things you can do to not only help me out, but help out yourself, especially in these times where information is important. Well, that's all I have for today, so I'll let you go. Have a nice day, and I will see you next time.